up YouTube? Today's video I'm going to go over one of the questions that I have always thought about, but I've only recently did any research into because my girlfriend recently started playing Path of Exile, and one of the first things she wanted was some microtransactions, right? Because she wanted to make her character look pretty. And this turns out to be one of the microtransactions in question. As you can see, it does look very visually stunning. And look at it, the wings flap and everything, it actually changes colors. Now, I was actually kind of surprised by this because I've actually never really seen anyone with this microtransaction, and I don't know of anyone with the microtransaction. So there's got to be a reason why, right? Why is this thing that is so cool, so pretty, so colorful, and it's like a RGB display, never really seen, right? And the answer to that question is that the wings actually cost $65. So when she wanted to buy it, my jaw kind of dropped. I didn't really know that there was actually a wing cosmetic that was that expensive. I always knew that Path of Exile had pretty expensive cosmetics, but I thought that they topped out around like $20 or $30. Now this is the Transcendence armor set. Now this armor set also kind of changes colors, and I think it is $85 for the whole armor set. In order to buy the whole Transcendence armor set, it costs around, I think it costs around like $200 or so, and that is a lot of money, especially in different countries where the exchange rate is a lot more unfavorable. So why is Path of Exile microtransactions so expensive, right? Now, you might think that Path of Exile is actually a free-to-play game, but the sad fact of the matter is that you can't really play the game without buying the stash tabs, or it's actually kind of like pay to win, and you can't even really sell items without stash tabs. So getting into Path of Exile and making it your main game is going to be a very, very expensive endeavor. You pretty much have to buy like a dump tab, you have to buy a currency tab, a map tab, a fragment tab, and those are pretty much the main ones you want to get. An essence tab probably, and maybe even a divination tab, and it adds up a lot. And then you might have to buy some premium stash tabs. But the fact of the matter is that Path of Exile gives you a lot of hours of gameplay, and I do think it's worth spending the money, but it is interesting to ask yourself, why are the microtransactions so expensive? So let me know down below in the comments below what's the most expensive microtransaction you've personally bought and how much you've actually spent on this game. But now let's go into why it is actually so expensive and the business model that GGG actually employs to make all of their revenue. So this graph right here kind of paints the picture of why exactly Path of Exile's business model revolves around microtransactions that are so expensive. So back when POE released, there's a lot of reports from game developers with this new free-to-play model. And before, most games were pay-to-play or subscription-based instead of free-to-play. And in the free-to-play model, which includes a lot of phone games like Clash of Clans and stuff like that, they found out that big spenders actually made up for a large chunk of player revenue. So right here, you can see that the 90th to 100th percentile of player spending makes up almost 64% of the total revenue. And what that means is that right here, it says that 20% of all paying players made 5 or more purchases during a month survey, up from 13% during the previous month. And then they say that only 2.3% of players spend money at all. So what that means is that only a tiny portion of players in these mobile games or free-to-play games actually spend any money at all, while the majority of them don't really buy anything at all. And then less than 1/4% of free-to-play mobile game players are responsible for the majority, 64% of those games' IAP revenue. For developers in this field, chasing the whale seems more important than ever. So what this means is that a tiny amount of players for free-to-play games make up the lion's share of the game's total revenue. So what this means is that by making the really expensive microtransactions, they will get more revenue because those players that support the game and buy microtransactions will pretty much buy them at any price, regardless of how expensive or how predatory they may be. while the people that don't spend any money on the game will not be really enticed by a lower amount. Now, this business model was kind of published and researched back in like 2013, 2014. So maybe now it's a little different, right? So maybe if the weapon effects weren't like $20 and they were $10 or $5, they would make more money. It is also possible that by releasing a battle pass, which is one of the new ways to monetize games, like maybe they could make a battle pass based around the challenges of the league and have a certain amount of microtransactions that gets unlocked. That would also be a very, very good idea. So I always thought that, wow, some of these things are just incredibly overpriced. You have like $30, $40 wings and $30, $40 armor effects. And the fact of the matter is that this might just be the best way for them to generate revenue, because most of the money is all from whales, and regular players don't really buy anything, and they actually don't really change the equation. So something else they actually added is boxes, right? Boxes is actually how they generate around, I think, 35-40% of their revenue. And boxes are pretty much just a form of gambling, in terms of you buy a box and then you get some items out of it, and the items have a chance to be a rare item, which could be a full armor set, but more often than not you could just get like a little sparkle or some sprites in your hideout. So that's another way that they generate money. So for a free-to-play game, GGG does know what they're doing. They definitely know how to monetize it in order to maximize the amount of revenue that can be generated from whales. So that is pretty much why everything is so expensive in terms of cosmetics, because the people who do spend money on Path of Exile will probably end up spending thousands and thousands of dollars at the very, very top end. And those players are the ones that account for probably like 80% of their total revenue. And that is just a sad fact of the free-to-play business model. But I hope that maybe now that after some new market research can be done, maybe that they'll find out that the free-to-play model, more and more people are willing to spend money, because I do believe that a lot of people are willing to buy supporter packs now, and they're willing to support them, but at a right price. And I do think that maybe having a few items that are super, super expensive is a good idea, but maybe having more accessible MTXs could make them potentially more money, like having the full armor packs be around like $20. But I do guess that people can actually just wait for the specials to buy it, which is another good thing. Specials are also another huge, huge form of making money in free-to-play games. A rotating shop of items is pretty much what it is. This creates like a need to be like, oh, it's on sale. If I don't buy it now, I'll never be able to get it. So this is a very, very good way of baiting players to spend money on microtransactions. So GGG really does it all. They do the gambling with the loot boxes. They maximize the amount of revenue from whales. And then they also have like a pseudo pay to win stuff with the actual stash tab bundles, and then they also do the rotating sales of the specials. So very, very good job on GGG's end of maximizing the amount of money and profit they can squeeze out of their game. So that's why the microtransactions are so expensive. Now I'm going to go over some really quick brief updates on my character in Deep Delve and how the journey is actually going. As you can see now, my character actually has a large cluster. This large cluster is actually like multi-exalts on the trade league. It is Snowstorm and Prismatic Heart. So Snowstorm gives me lightning as extra cold damage, which is what I really need. And Prismatic Heart is elemental damage and resistance. And I'm running a medium cluster, which is quick getaway and supposedly supposed to be pressure points, but I'm still going to try to alt-regal it. So you can see we're kind of in business now. We have one large cluster. We will be taking another large cluster over here once we have the levels, and regrets to do it. As you can see, my stash tab is very, very sad in terms of the amount of currency. And here's my crafting tab of what I'm trying to work on. As in all SSF, you should always have some goals on your character regarding what you want to do and what you're actually trying to farm for. And for me currently, it is definitely trying to get the medium clusters. So I have another large cluster lightning damage and it's rolled with Prismatic Heart Snowstorm. So I'll probably just end up using this, as I do need to save my fossils and essences for other stuff. So right now we're pretty much waiting in the medium cluster waiting room. It is incredibly hard to actually farm clusters. I think I only farmed like 10 total yesterday, and it's just a terrible experience, and actually very frustrating to say the least. But that's just how SSF is. But basically we have the large clusters, and we're just missing 3 more medium clusters, and that'll probably be the setup: 2 large, 2 mediums, and or 4 mediums, and that would just be the way I'm gonna do it. And now I also have a Conjurer's Vestment, which I could roll for Frenzy Charge on hit, and that'll probably have to be Chaos Spammed or Fossiled. And then I also could potentially craft an attack crit, a spell crit chest, which I can make through Caster Fossils, which is etheric. So that is probably something I'm going to also focus on. So we did craft the Fingerless Silk Gloves. It is really badly rolled actually, so I'll probably try to get something a little bit better, but it is very hard to get influence items in Delve generally, besides Shaper. All of the other influences like Warlord, Hunter, Crusader is actually incredibly hard. But I do have a lot of influence bases now, but you can see I actually have a Hunter ring, which if I was playing Poisonous Concoction or Toxic Rain, I could actually get Despair on it. But in terms of my gear, I still have this insane wand that I was able to craft with Chaos Orbs, still using the 5-link helm. I will be trying to 6-link a chest, probably one of these influence chests soon. I'm using this thing to get 58% spell block with Tempest Shield. And pretty much I'm using this item here to get some life gain on each enemy hit from spells, and I do think that is pretty useful. And it also has some cast speed, which is some good damage, and mana and cold res. And most importantly, it also has 2 mana gain on hit, making it very easy for my Storm Brand to sustain itself on mana. So I was actually able to get this belt ID'd off the ground, just life and res. Nice part about Strength, it actually acts as spell crit for us because of this one node here, which is 1% increased critical strike chance per point of Strength for int, whichever is lower. So you can see here we have 372 int and 236 Strength, meaning that we actually have 236% spell crit. So this pair of boots I finally rolled. Now it doesn't look like much, but if I could craft life on it, this pair of boots will be very good. But alas, no crafting bench, but it does have 41 spell crit and it's technically 20 life. Still using the Restless Ward, very good chest piece because of the high evasion and energy shield. And it also gives you some move speed with frenzy charges. So I could technically try to go for a 6-link, but not really sure if I would be able to get it. I like this chest a lot because it helps out with the uptime with frenzy charges when it's mostly just from the Ice Bite gem. So that helps us out a lot with uptime on nodes and maybe bosses. So Flask overall, since running Quicksilver, I did roll it for increased effect because movement speed is pretty much king in Delve. And here is the Quartz Flask and Jade Flask, Diamond Flask, and Granite Flask. A big problem I'm having is I don't really get enough of the Enkindling Orbs, and you don't really drop that many, or Instilling Orbs that is. And I've been trying to roll this Flask Quartz here with this thing. Reuse it, and the Flask effect is pretty good. It pretty much keeps the flask up at all times, and you just have to press it once at the start, at the beginning of running to the next node. So overall, I did end up killing an O or whatever, and my amulet is over here. I did get Purity of Fire. Now, Purity of Fire is pretty nice, and I might be able to run Righteous Fire in the future. I also got Snake Pit Ring, so if I ever wanted to, I could technically go like Eye of Winter, Mines, or Traps, or something like that. And more incredibly, I did find 2 Enlightens. I don't even know how that happens, but I did find 2 Enlightens. No brand clusters though, but sometimes you get lucky in one thing, and sometimes you get lucky in other things, but it's pretty crazy to find 2 Enlightens, I think. I was expecting to find 0. So you can see I did find a lot of gear. Main thing I'm still looking for is Call of the Brotherhoods and brand clusters. Character is currently 95. I'm going to try to level to 97 before I head straight down. Because after 97, it takes forever to level, and I think the time investment is just too high for the payout. But that's going to be it for me, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed seeing why Path of Exile's microtransactions are so much and how exactly they're able to maximize the amount of money they can take from us. And to be fair, the microtransactions do look very, very nice, and the wings are absolutely sick. So feel free to pick it up. It only costs around, I think, $200 for the whole set. But yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more mirrors, exalts, and mage bloods than me, and see you next time. Bye.